On one side, you are reading a lot of literature, and on the other side, everybody is nudging you towards engineering
Yes,
and doing something which will lead to a regular job.
absolutely.
So you get sort of a little confused in terms of what you want to do. Finally, whatever I did has led to me becoming the writer that I have become. But I ended up doing engineering. I moved from Benares to Trichy. My intention was to move as far away from Benares as possible.
Absolutely.
Because
Absolutely.
there comes a time when you get sick of your hometown, which is a very good thing, because that's when you can look at your hometown in a different way after a couple of years. That's what happened to me. And I went to REC Trichy, which is now called NIT Trichy. So every state in India had a representation. You get to first understand people in a very different way. You
Yes.
get to see people as human beings, not as, ये South Indian है, ये Northeasterner है,
Absolutely.
That exposure, that is the thing that in India, I think, is missing, grossly missing, in most educational opportunities. We say we are one, right? This is something you would have heard, right? We are all one.
Uh-huh.
Not equal, one.
We are one.
Equality,
Vedanta ka jo,
right? So the question is, how does separation get created? How does duality happen? It happens over a period of time, okay?
Yes.
And it is the complete foundation of societal systems. It is the complete foundation of everything that happens in the world as human beings, right? The first thought is that I is this mind and body. This mind and
Yes.
body is I.
Yes.
The moment that thought arises, every other thought arises after that.
Yes.
Because all the thoughts that arise are a function of this foundational thought.
There is no doer.
Hmm.
Doesn't imply that your body won't be the instrument of action.
Hmm.
It will act according to its genes and conditioning.
We are always taught from the very beginning in our lives that you have to do this, you have to do that. You can get up in the morning, and if you decide to do it, you can study for 14 hours continuously and get into IIT. What is the thought that gets imprinted in your head? That I am the doer.
Siddharth, first of all, thank you so much for being a part of our Discovery of an Author podcast. I
Thanks, Raghav.
genuinely had a really brilliant time speaking with you when we were interviewing you for Blessing. I have read your book UnMind, and it was thank you for introducing me to the core philosophy of Ramana Maharshi. I had not read much about his work. We'll tell you why we're doing this thing, and why you mean so much for us and to us. The idea for us is to see, again, we as a company, and why we're doing this podcast is we want to be the storytellers for the storytellers. We want to create stories around the storytellers and the creators. We want to highlight authors, not just write about the books and speak about the books, but to really go behind the personality. The idea of the podcast was to be like a memoir for the author. Like not every author gets up to a stage wherein they can write a memoir and it is well received. Very few people can do that, but that does not mean that those people who are writing amazing books have nothing worth of like experiences to share, right? So we want to be that. The concept of blessing and discovery of an author is to discover the author. As I used to tell my friends that Murakami is a very famous writer. But and the second thing why we're doing this thing is that I firmly believe in this very simple formula. In the global literature scene and stage, English is the primary language. It's a fact.
Yeah.
And Indians, because we have a very good command of the language, whatever we write has the potential of becoming global because of the command of a language that we have, and because we are able to articulate and write very well in that language. So I see a potential in terms of market. That this is something that Indians can do. I recently saw the news that there's a South Korean lady who won the Nobel Prize in Literature. Just today it came. And I was like, man, we could have been. I mean, Indians and Indian writers could, and we are doing amazing. It's not as if we are not doing good. I just see that India could have had an upper edge in
Hmm.
this way. So that's why I want more readership to increase for Indian authors, be it
Right.
Indian or be it global, and that's the best way to do it. Chaliye. So Siddharth, this was just an intro of why we're doing what we're doing. I think it's very important for also you to know and for our audience to also know why we're doing this thing and what's the differentiating factor, right?
Right. Thanks, Raghu.
Okay,
Thanks.
yeah. So Siddharth, we'll now start with you. The first thing that because we have read your book, we have taken a lot of notes. The
Hmm.
first thing that we will start is to delve into your background. So
Hmm.
start from the beginning. We have all read your interview. We know you come from Benares. We are very well aware of your childhood, but I want you to go deep into it. So the first half of that entire podcast would be dedicated to your personal journey. Anything that you would like to share, positives, negatives, anything, as much as
Hmm.
you would want to tell us. It's very important because we all have our ups and downs. So you never know what people might relate with. आप बताइए अपने
Hmm.
बचपने से स्टार्ट करिए जितना आपको बताना बताइए प्लीज स्टार्ट वी वांट टू नो यू प्लीज इंट्रोड्यूस योरसेल्फ
So thank you. Thanks, Raghu. In terms of childhood, okay, so to give you a very broad understanding of my background, I belong to a family of educators. So if you look at my family tree, if you look at my grandfathers from both the sides, my grandmother and my maternal uncles, paternal uncles, and so on, everybody is a professor in some subject or the other. So and amongst in within the family, I think we would have covered nearly every subject. So we have a professor of geography, economics, mechanical engineering, English literature, political science, Hindi, Sanskrit. And everybody did their own thing. So everybody did pursued their own interest, their own subject. We don't have that kind of lineage key. Everybody is an economics professor, one after the other. So everybody did what they wanted to do. And so I was raised by my mother. It was a single family kind of a setup. My mom and dad separated when I was very young, and so I was raised by my mother and also raised by my grandparents, my maternal grandparents, my nana nani. So we all lived together in a house in Benares. This was a house that my grandfather had built on his own after he retired. This was his dream house, the kind of a place where he could do what he wanted to do after he retired, which is he wanted to raise cows. So he had a very big cow shed. And we had like I grew up, living with cows, feeding cows. Big fan of cows. I spent a lot of time with them when I was a child, and he was a Sanskrit scholar. Mm. He wrote a lot of dramas in Sanskrit. He was very keen on popularizing Sanskrit as a language, and therefore many of his books were prescribed in universities, even now are. And so I remember this memory that he would wake me up at about 4 in the morning because I was the only one who could be woken up at 4. I
yeah
was a child. So he would
yes
woke me up, he would shake me and he would wake me, and then we would go out and then we will do the round, which was to say first we'll feed the cows,
okay
we'll water the plants. I learned how to mix the bhusa khali of
oh wow
the cow fodder, and we would water the plants. And then after all that is done, he would come sit on his cart. He used to have a cart just outside on the veranda, and that cart used to have books all around, right? So he
wow
would make space for me and for him, and then he would sit there, and then he'll read something from somewhere for me, or he would just tell me to go so that he could study, right?
wow
So I sort of ended up, and then the whole house was filled with books. My mother is a English literature professor. My
wow
father was a mechanical engineering professor, but he also was very, very keen on reading.
oh okay
Uh, So from childhood, I took to reading because also there were very limited distractions at the time. If you remember, you much younger to me, but I mean for me it was like, I think I remember when I was a child, about 6 7 year old, the television used to start at 7 o'clock
In
in the
the
evening.
evening.
Doordarshan.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
Yeah, Doordarshan used to start 7 o'clock. It used to start with a program called Krishi Darshan.
I've heard
Okay.
about it.
Yeah, it's a beautiful program. I've watched it. It's a wonderful program. It used to talk about, kheti and farming and stuff like
Yep.
that, and
Rishi.
what is the
Yes.
right crop for what season, what fertilizers to use, why not use fertilizers. I remember a lot of that. It was super nice. And then at 7:30, I think news would come, or something like that, and then there would be 2 days in a week. There used to be Chitrahar
Yep.
from 8 to 8:30, and then
Yep.
then news again. So that was the TV. The TV used to be like 2.5 hours long, and
Mm.
then on Sundays you used to get a longer day, when it used to start at around 9 o'clock in the morning.
Mm.
So of course, my reading habit is not only a function of, my family background and the fact that there were like lots of books at home, but also a function of the fact that there was nothing much to do.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right. And,
Yes,
and
yes.
now kids have a lot of other
A lot of
distractions.
distractions.
So that was one of the things that happened. I mean, I grew up reading quite a bit. I studied in a convent school. This was a convent school in Benares, and again, the quality of English education in the school was excellent.
Mm.
It was also an ICSE school.
Okay.
So I got the opportunity to, although I used to hear the words Hamlet and Macbeth at home because my mom is a Shakespeare scholar as well.
Yep.
But I got the opportunity to study Shakespeare, which I think I mentioned to you is one of the things that
Yes.
I always tell people, that you have to at least study one serious play like a Julius Caesar or Macbeth, because that play is a microcosm of life. If you get into and you really truly understand that play, you understand life in a very different way, in a
Yes.
very deep way.
Absolutely.
It's very similar to, actually, if I can compare reading Ramayana. It's
Absolutely.
like
I
a
was about to say Mahabharat, but yes, same thing. It's
Yeah,
like an
yeah.
enactment of what happened.
Correct. And so that exposure really was very, very crucial in terms of my development as a writer. But
Mm.
I think the early years in Banaras, I think, were excellent. Banaras is, as I've told you, is a beautiful city. It
Absolutely.
has it has it is like full of contradictions, but my takeaway from Banaras has been always a happy takeaway. I have always felt happy thinking back at the time that I spent in my childhood, where I was able to see or witness all forms of life.
Yes.
I did not live a very protected life, which was to say that I actually had friends across social stratas. Um, if I walked outside of my home, right, to the left there was a shanty, right? There was like a with huts and people who were what you call it. They used to clean. There was a small set of there was a living accommodation for people who used to work for the municipality cleaning sewers. You know,
Yep.
and they used to raise pigs. And the
Raise
pigs
pigs.
used to roam around the
Yep.
colony. So it was that's the beauty of Banaras. Banaras doesn't
Yes.
protect you from anything. Banaras shows you everything, and then it tells you, and it tries to lead you to the conclusion that everything is
Absolutely.
beautiful,
Absolutely.
right, in its own
Absolutely.
way.
Yeah.
So that's
It
what
pokes you.
yeah, so I think that is one of the things that was very good about my childhood in terms of being exposed to a wide variety of things, courtesy the city, exposed to books, courtesy my background, and also a very in-depth exposure to music, which was also
Mm.
courtesy my father. Um I think my father studied in the US in the 70s.
Okay.
uh, he did his MS from Washington State University. And he was the one who actually started talking about. I got into rock and roll actually because of him. So he started talking about Elvis. He talked about Beatles. He bought the first cassette that I ever got, which was Beatles' Help. That's an album released in '66,
Okay.
which is one of their best transitional albums. But essentially, when I was in sixth, I got three or four cassettes that he gifted me, which I went with him and bought with him. He used to visit,
Mm,
which was Michael Jackson's Thriller,
mm,
Elvis number one hits, and
mm.
Beatles Help. And I think it blew my mind. I was like sitting
Wow.
in Benares,
Wow.
and I was very comfortable with English, so that was great. But you know what happened was that you're thinking in a particular way, and you have a couple of people singing to you who are thinking in the same way.
Yes.
Right, when your heart breaks and you hear a song from the Beatles which actually sort of resonates with you completely, it's a very different feeling. It's a very
Absolutely.
different feeling. Somebody was asking me a few days back, what is true art? And
Mm.
I felt that true art is any art which is able to pull you up when you are looking for something to pull you up.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is, yes.
You
Think
know,
about it.
so
Yes. Think about it.
it has to be accessible enough
Yes.
for you to be pulled up at the right time. So every person may
Absolutely.
have a different perception of true art. For example, somebody might find solace and very deep peace in listening to Beethoven. For me, at the time when I was growing up, it was, listening to the Beatles,
Yes.
listening to the Rolling Stones, and so on. So music actually played a very, very important part in my life. I think yeah, Kurt Vonnegut is one of the writers who had said that all writers are failed musicians. Uh, but my love for music and books has continued. I still read a lot. At a time, I was reading about three, four books at a time.
So you
Uh,
switch. So you switch between them. So let's say you're reading one and then
yeah,
maybe
yeah.
you like, chalo,
Yeah,
ab
yeah,
ek baar
yeah.
aise, aise karenge, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. For example, I told you I mentioned a book called Basham's History, Wonder That
Yes.
Was India. So I'm
Yes.
reading Wonder That Was India. I'm also reading a book, Endless Vow, which is a biography of a Zen monk. Uh,
Acha. Okay.
right.
Interesting.
I'm reading 1984 again.
Yeah,
Uh,
George Orwell. Sorry, George
Yeah,
Orwell's 1984.
Orwell's, yeah. And I'm reading this uh, what do you call it? This book on a Zen monk called Ryakan, his collection of poems.
His collection of poems. Okay.
When I was like in senior school, high school, I was a little directionless. I think I didn't know exactly what to do, which is a good thing also because
Yes.
on one side you are reading a lot of literature, and on the other side, everybody is nudging you towards engineering
Yes.
and doing something which will lead to a regular job.
Absolutely.
So you get sort of a little confused in terms of what you want to do, and you're very and I was very very young, so I think finally whatever I did has led to me becoming the writer that I have become. But I ended up doing engineering. I moved from Benares to Trichy. I think I told you the
Yep.
story that my intention was to move as far away from Benares as possible.
Absolutely.
Because
Absolutely.
there comes a time when you get sick of your hometown, which is a very good thing because that's when you can look at your hometown in a different way after a couple of years. That's what happened to me. But there was a point when I used to feel that I need to get out of here. It was the right thing to do.
Yes.
Once you go to a place where you see and I went to REC Trichy, which is now called NIT Trichy, and you have a place where you have the concept of RECs used to be that you would get people from different states, right? And so every state in India had a representation,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Yes.
And that's a lovely concept because
Lovely concept.
first you get to first understand people in a very different way. You
Yes.
get to see people as human beings, not as कि ये South Indian है, ये North Easterner है.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You get to meet those people. You get to become very very good friends with those people, and you also tend to understand. where you stand.
Absolutely.
Not only in terms of your academic
But your
abilities.
orientation,
Yeah, overall,
as a whole.
yeah, very very a simple example. I used to feel I've listened to Dark Side of the Moon. My God,
हाँ हाँ बिल्कुल, I
यू नो
got it. But then you meet
आपको लगता
someone.
है कि मैंने डार्क साइड ऑफ द मून सुना हुआ है, मैं डार्क साइड ऑफ द मून में मैंने टाइम और मनी के लिरिक्स मुझे याद हैं, तो मुझे तो बहुत कुछ आता है टाइप्स। और फिर वहां पे आप जाके देखो तो वहां पे वो जनता आरईएम सुन रही है,
हाँ, और
वो
गिटार बजा रही है उस पे,
मूडी
परफॉर्म भी
ब्लूज
कर
सुन
रही
रही
है।
है, वो गिटार बजा रही
हाँ
है, यस
या
सो
एंड दे
यू
मूव्ड ऑन।
फील, yeah, then again in books you feel that you've read Salinger, Catcher in the Rye, so you know a lot। फिर तुम्हें पता चलता है कि यार वो मतलब होता है कि वो जीबी शॉ पढ़ रहा है, कोई और जो है
बिल्कुल
वहां पे बर्नर्ड मैलमूट पढ़ रहा है,
बिल्कुल
सो
बिल्कुल।
that exposure, that is the thing that in India I think is missing, grossly missing, in most educational opportunities, where you do not, if you do not get to go to a high quality institute or a good institute,
Absolutely.
you do not get that kind of exposure. But
Absolutely.
luckily I went to a decent place, and I was able to learn a lot from my classmates, my batchmates, across the board. There are a lot of people that I owe a lot to in terms of my learning, who are my peers, my colleagues, my classmates there. Um, and I think I
Siddharth,
learned more
I
in,
want to
yeah,
ask one question. Sorry.
yeah.
Before, so this transition, I just want to ask a very candid question.
Hmm.
Throughout your journey and childhood and till the point you went to college, and you have obviously specified on the point that you wanted to go out. There are obviously multiple factors that culminate in a decision. So
Yeah.
आपका जैसे पेरेंट्स का जो सेपरेशन था, कहीं ना कहीं उसका थोड़ा सा क्या प्रभाव रहा है इन टर्म्स ऑफ योर ओरिएंटेशन एंड योर द was that one of the factors in deciding I just want to go away and figure it out because
No,
it's
not
a
really. I think the because it's still a small town, it's still in
hmm,
UP. You would always get that question, where is your father?
yeah
Right? Why do your
yeah
mom and dad don't live together? Right?
yeah
That question you could get asked in on a railway platform.
absolutely
Because UP, right?
yes yes
There is zero privacy. Like the
there's zero
moment you
privacy
start talking to somebody, within 1 minute, that person will get friendly with you and start asking all sorts of questions, right?
बिल्कुल
So
बिल्कुल
I
बिल्कुल
was pretty used to that. I don't think that led to it. In fact,
okay
one of the things that it really led to is a genuinely deep respect for women,
explain this
which
कैसे ये ओरिएंटेशन आई वुड वांट टू नो
because my mom was a single mom and she raised me, and I
अच्छा
saw her
यस
struggling through all the possible biases that make raising a child difficult for a woman, that makes being successful in a career difficult for women.
इंटरेस्टिंग
Right. So, for example, my mom was a professor of English literature in Benares University. She faced really serious biases, challenges, because she was very good at what she did. And men can't stand it.
या
We all know that,
इट्स अ
right?
पेट्रियार्चिकल स्टेट
Yeah, it's a patriarchal state. I think across the board in India, men can't stand women rising up.
नो दे
Let's
कांट
be honest about it. It's not only about UP. You go, you see the modern corporate environment. It's the same
yeah
thing. You are more polished about it. We are more polished
yeah
about it,
yeah but sometimes
right?
even I am sometimes even I can't. I'm being very
Yeah,
honest. Sometimes even
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
like I could do better than her.
Yeah. So I sort of in a way, when I look back at it, it was the time when I understood that that holding on to such dogmas is one of the worst things you can do to yourself or to anyone else. To look at women differently, to look at your wife in a different way of saying that I am better than her, I am the leader, I am the head of the family, or in any
Yes,
such circumstance, right?
absolutely.
The typical Indian household where the mother will not come out without bringing those that plate with two glasses of
Absolutely.
water,
Absolutely. The
right? So
specific attire that you have
yeah,
to
specific attire.
don
So
whenever you are in a public
I
space.
think my household was not like that. I think that was the wonderful thing about it. I think that has really helped me in life. It has really helped me in looking at things in the right way. And also dealing with the workplace in the right way, managing the workplace in the right way. So yeah, that was one of the things that happened, but that was not the reason that led to me moving out. I think after a point you will think, I think you will agree that even if you spend like 4 years in engineering college, after 4 years you know you are done.
Absolutely.
Right. It's like it's a lovely place. You will have lots of nostalgic memories about it, but you know you are done, right? You need to move on. If you
Yeah,
need to,
last year is a
for
drag.
me,
Yeah, last
yeah,
year is a drag. You know.
yeah. Last year is a drag. Last year is a total drag. You know it, and you don't want to accept it, but everybody
Absolutely.
knows it. You know,
Absolutely.
right? So the same thing happened. Yeah, you feel that you have to. I'm a very curious person. If I get into something, I need to know it in and out, right? There is no way I know. So for me,
Correct.
for example, after a point, a city stops giving you or offering you more till you go out and learn something else and then go back to the city. So it's like your own development actually it gets curtailed by the
Absolutely.
city, and vice versa. Your understanding of the city gets curtailed because you don't have that maturity.
Absolutely.
So there is a
Absolutely.
time when you have to leave, uh,
Absolutely. It is.
right, to grow. And for some people may not be necessary. Some people may grow there only, but for me it was a time when I had to sort of go out. Really really helps. I think I would highly recommend
Absolutely.
doing something like that. You also tend to form really close friendships,
Yeah.
which in a way stay with you for the rest of your life. And I think overall 4 years in Trichy, for me the college life was a great experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that way. And I but in the meantime, whenever I would go back and visit Banaras, I would appreciate Banaras in a different way as well. So
Absolutely. That happens. Absolutely.
yeah,
Because the lens
yeah,
changes, right? Your lens
yeah,
changes. And I think what is more important when you say when you go out, you get experiences. When you come back, sometimes you also wish if I could get that experience and embed into where I am coming back to.
correct,
जैसे ये
correct.
some NRIs do that. They go out, they study, they become people or whatever. They then come back, they come as investors, and like this is happening
Yeah,
a lot right now. You somehow
yes,
feel that I have this responsibility of bringing that culture,
to
and that
give
is what
back.
has been, yeah, that is what is happening. That is exactly how the Indian startup ecosystem started. It
Yeah,
was by these people who were working for these top Amazons and whatnot,
correct.
Googles and Microsoft. They came back and
Yeah.
they wanted to give it back to them. So Siddharth, up see in this entire journey, now let's deep dive into let's talk a little bit about your first book, and
Hmm.
I want you to structure it this way, similar to how we did in the interview: the inception of the
Hmm.
idea, the inspiration of the idea, and the output of that in the form of
Hmm.
book. So inception, inspiration, and output, and then we'll talk about the receptivity. So let's start with
Okay.
the first book. Let's start with the
Okay.
inception of the first book.
Okay. Right. Yeah. So the thing that happens right eventually is that what for me at least what happened was I used to write in school.
Mm.
I used to write in college. In college, I won a couple of creative writing competitions. And you tend to feel that you know um, I want to write a complete novel if I can, right?
Ah,
That's what one of the things
absolutely,
that I wanted to do always,
absolutely.
because a novel is like a it's very difficult to really it's like a project where you don't know whether you will be able to end it, what will happen in the end, and
Absolutely.
how it will turn out, and how much time it will take. You have no idea.
There is no standard
uh,
structure. There is no standard
Yeah, there
structure
is no
which
standard
helps you.
structure. And yeah, so of course, there are people who write professionally
Ah,
who can work it out and who have figured it out.
yes,
But for me, the first book that I wrote, there was no standard structure, there was no guarantee, and there was no
absolutely.
way I would know how it will turn out or whether it will turn out well or not. But the main thing that really makes me want to do something is there is this urge inside of me that this story needs to be told.
Ah,
Which is the question which is important. Whether a story needs
yes,
to be told is an urge that only you can understand inside of you. It comes from inside of you, and you feel कि ये कहानी मुझे लिखनी है, ये कहानी
बिल्कुल.
बतानी चाहिए. Now the
Yes.
question is कि आपको क्यों बतानी चाहिए. So for me, now I can rationalize it and I can give you a reason. But at that time, the only point that was important is that the story needs to be told. The rationalization, of course, is that the first book is about school life. It's called The Virgins. Why it's called The
Yep.
Virgins? It's why it's called The Virgins is because I was listening to a band called The Virgins at the time.
Yep.
Right, but that's the reason why it fitted into the story is because this is about like 14, 15-year-old kids, 15, 16-year-old kids who are just getting to experience what being an adult would be like and how miserable and difficult it is to actually move into adult life,
Transition. Yes.
the transition. And that's why it's called The Virgins. It's like these three are the virgins.
Yes. Yes.
So, and it was from my school life where when I was in 10th, 11th, 12th, I spent a lot of time with people that I should not have spent time with, which is very bad for your career and for your, but very good for your when you're writing a
Creative
book.
arc. Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
everything has its ups and downs, but
Places.
I had a very free childhood. I could choose who I wanted to be with. I could be, and I was interested with the fact that I was in charge of my life, which is not always the right thing to do, but I think it worked out for me.
Yeah, it's
So
liberating as well. It's very
yeah, it is
empowering.
liberating as well. So I spent a lot of time with a lot of people from across stratas. In terms of my friends were people who were very, very rich, who didn't have any care in the world and were always involved in things that they should not be involved in, or they were aping their fathers who were not doing anyway, who were in a lot of ways had earned all their money by doing the wrong things,
Absolutely.
or
Absolutely.
or I had friends who were really poor who belonged to a very large family, and so on. And I was sort of in the middle. I was the middle class. My parents' expectations from me was that I need to do something in life. I need to study. I need to do well. I need to start earning a salary. And I was in the middle of that spectrum where somebody is so poor that they don't know whether they will get a meal tonight, and somebody who is so rich that for them there is not a single care in the world,
Yeah.
right? And they feel that there is no law. So in between, I was stuck in between, and actually I'm one of the things that has been great with my mind, which has nothing to do with me, is that I remember things. I remember things very
Mm.
well. I remember
Yes.
every detail of, for example, if I visited a house long time back, I would remember broadly, exactly how the walls looked like, where the walls were sort of decaying a bit or getting moss on them.
Oh
So I
wow,
would
that
remember
is
even the
good
small
detail.
details. Yeah,
Yeah,
even the
that's
small details. That's something that holds you in good stead when you're a writer. And I experienced a lot of uh, what do you call it, ups and downs, and witnessed ups and downs of people who were very close to me, uh, which were primarily led by how society is designed,
mm. Makes
and the
sense.
haves and the have-nots, which is something very similar to what happened in Hazaro Khwaishein Aisi. If you've seen that movie
Yep.
is also about haves and have-nots. If in the end the rich guy always gets out, right, and
Yes.
and and is able to get away with it, while the ones who are the have-nots are the ones who suffer.
Absolutely.
So, uh, so, so that is something that I saw very closely as a child, as a teenager, and I felt that there is a very beautiful school story that needs to be told, which is absolutely the rough, raw, um, narrative about how things really are.
Hmm.
as real as it could
Hmm.
be, you know. So it's not the Karan Johar version of school.
Yeah, that's
It's not the Rockford version of school, which is of course somebody's school. I'm not
yeah, that
saying.
exists, but that's not the generic
Yeah, that's not the
reality
school that
of
I'm
a.
yeah. So the school that I was the friends that I had, the school that I had, that story I did not see it coming out anywhere. I did not see it. And I thought that story needs to be told. I thought the setting of that story being told from in Benares is also sort of really adds to the story in a very different way. And that's how Virgins was born. Virgins is about three guys, all 16, 17, belonging to three different classes of society, and how their friendship goes through strain and goes through a couple of events, and how things change for them as they are moving towards a formative year in their life, which is class 12.
Yep, yep. And this was in which year when this came out?
It came out in 11.
See, 2011, you wrote about the schools ecosystem,
Yeah.
and now we see a surge of web series coming up late 2019s and 20s because
Yeah.
you're right. This has to be told, and this was never told. हम कॉलेज पर्सपेक्टिव से फिर भी सुनते थे वो 5 points इसमें 5 point someone and all that was when you're in
Hmm.
college and everything, and
Hmm.
that was around IIT, and that is why it was so interesting for us. But the
Hmm.
school thing is now something that is picked up really well,
Correct.
so you were ahead of
Oh,
your time in
actually,
terms of
Joe,
narrating this
this
thing.
this this is again this entire attempt to capture middle class and middle class experiences of 80s, 90s, etc., etc. This again is a concept that India may it never sort of took hold
Yep.
till Koreans did it, and then we realized that it has commercial potential.
Achha, I'm not
Uh,
aware of this angle. So Koreans did
Yeah, yeah. So
exploit
you
this thing
watch,
in
like,
their
for example,
storytelling,
Reply
kya?
1988. Reply
Okay.
1988 is a classic 16 episode, 18 episode or 20 episode series on growing up in 1988
In Korea,
in Korea.
in
Okay. And if
South
in
Korea.
South Korea, and if you watch it, you will see 80% of your life will resonate with it.
Achha, हाँ, I'm
ओके,
sure, yeah.
बिकॉज
Yeah, I'm
कोई
sure.
डिफरेंस नहीं है, वो
I'm
सेम
sure.
चीज है, आप वहां पे
I'm
भी
sure.
सेम है, टीनेजर सेम है, सब कुछ सेम है. बट सो दोज शोज बिकेम अ सुपर हिट. सो व्हाट हैपेंड वाज रिप्लाई 1988, the 20th episode, the final episode, had the higher viewership of any TV series in the history of the world.
Oh,
Yeah, percentage viewership for a country,
wow.
right? So then the likes of TVF, the likes of all of these folks.
Oh, is it?
See, that's
Achha.
how I feel about it.
No,
I
but
feel
that's
like,
interesting, na. If that came earlier, there's this very high chance and probability that we
yeah,
also wanted
see,
them to capitalize on this, this
nothing in Indian cinema has happened, which has not happened outside. That is one of the
outside.
terrible things about India.
Absolutely.
That's
Absolutely.
one of the terrible
Absolutely.
things about India.
Absolutely.
In music, if you look at music, okay, so what has happened is we've forgotten everything that we have done from a classical perspective. So if you look at modern music, look at modern filmmaking, not one single instance can you cite where you'll say that this is a completely truly original piece of work
Such a
which has
sad thing,
drawn
yeah.
inspiration from anything from the West or anything from other parts of the world. I would really doubt it. I would really seriously doubt it. But if it has happened, very good. But I have not seen it.
So this was about the Virgins, right? So
Yeah.
when did you publish? When did it release? And how was the reception? And kaisa laga becoming a first time author? I want to know that feeling and what went into your mind.
Yeah, I think with virgins, actually, what happened was I was also a virgin in terms of writing, right? Or how the book will turn out in terms of getting published. I think I told you earlier in our interaction that I quit my job to write at the
Yep.
time.
Yep.
I was working in a consulting firm, and I realized that I had written about one third of the book, when I decided that I needed time on my own to write this. I quit for about 10, 11 months. I was not
Yes.
working. About 11 months, I was not working. I actually joined the MDI library. So MDI Gurgaon is my alma mater. I did my
Yep.
MBA from there.
Yep.
I joined the MDI library, and I used to go in the morning. I used to drop my wife to work and then go to the library and write there. There's something about a academic institute. You go inside, you feel different.
Yep.
है
Yep.
ना? MDI is a very beautiful institute. It has red brick buildings, and it's very green as well. After I wrote book, I pitched the book to a couple of agents because I was told that literary agents are the right way to go. Although
Yes.
literary agents in India is a very fledgling industry, it's a very small
Yes.
set of people. Even now, it's I think number of good literary agents will not be more than six, seven.
Yeah. Agreed.
And I got in touch with a literary agent. He liked the book. He pitched the book to a couple of publishers. I used to feel at the time that this kind of a book will be taken up by the Penguins of the world or the HarperCollins of the world. That did not happen. I realized that actually that industry is very different from what you expect. Not always everything is about what you feel is great. It's about how it's going to be taken or received by the market,
Mhm.
which forms a very important part of what publishers want to publish. There is nothing wrong with that as well.
Mhm.
And but finally we did find a publisher who was willing to publish. This publisher is called Fingerprint. It's a
Mhm.
publisher that publishes a lot of new authors.
Yeah.
And I remember my advance as well. I was paid an advance of 50,000 rupees, which is something that I'll always treasure. It
Absolutely,
was
man. Absolutely.
it is something that you feel that ये मैंने पैसा खुद से कमाया है. I don't know how you
Absolutely.
get that
That you
feeling.
earn it.
Yeah,
This you earned it through
you
your.
earned it. Like when you do a regular job, you never get that feeling for some reason.
Yeah. You don't. You don't.
Right. So yeah. So the book was received quite well, I think. The book received very good reviews. But it had a very limited coverage in terms of press. Because of course, in India, I think getting a book covered by the press requires you to either have a standing as
Absolutely.
someone who is either a social media celebrity or a politician or something like that, or someone who is really who a publishing firm really invests in terms of marketing.
Absolutely.
Both
Absolutely.
of those things I did not have, right?
Absolutely.
So the book did well. The book still is doing pretty well, and it was eventually bought by Dice Media for a film adaptation, which did not happen.
Mhm.
Has not happened, so I don't think it'll happen. But
Mhm.
that way, I felt. I did feel that the reviews that I got for the book, people did get what I was trying to do with the
Got it.
book. That actually encouraged me to, in a way, write a sequel, which is Blowfish is like a sequel to Virgins. It does not take any of the characters from Virgins except the main character, because that character in a way reflects my me being there in the
Yes.
book.
Yes. Yes.
But it sort of steps away from where Virgins ended, and it moves to about 9 years ahead of that. And it
Yes.
goes into corporate life in Gurgaon. And it talks about a guy who quits his job to write a book.
This is exactly what you did with the first book. This
Yes,
is what. But for
this
the
is exactly
second
what
book,
I.
I remember you did not quit your job for the second book, right? The Blowfish was written in parallel
For the
with your job, right?
no. Blowfish was also not written parallel. So half of Blowfish was written in parallel with my job. Half of Blowfish was written while I was not doing anything. I took a break, about another 4 5 months break,
Yes.
and I wrote the rest of Blowfish at that time. There was a particular phase in my life when I used to believe that you could not write a book without completely
Completely.
engrossed in the book. I feel that it may not always apply to every book,
Yes.
but for me, I do feel that it applies to novels.
And I think
Uh,
in your interview you had mentioned that you're a kind of a person that who's doing one thing, you would want to go into that one thing rather than juggle multiple things. So that is
yeah,
also something that you mentioned.
it's like I'm not a multitasker. I think it's like the book has a world, and if you enter that world, then you should stay in that world
Absolutely. To,
for the time
to
when
do
you're writing it.
justice.
That's the yeah. So and that is one of the reasons why you have to very carefully pick what is the book that you want to write. I feel that you.
Bilkul.
I think I was telling you about right this. There are a lot of experiences that you want to write about, but a lot of experiences are such that you don't want to enter that world.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So, for
Absolutely. Bilkul,
example,
bilkul.
I was telling you about the fact that I have had experiences in the startup ecosystem that I feel can turn into a very good novel.
Yep.
But the thing that really does not really attract me is the fact that I'll have to spend 1 year thinking about that world.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
I don't want to do that. It's not worth it. So for me, it has to be a good experience, which gives you happiness.
Absolutely. It makes sense. Makes sense. It definitely,
Yeah.
definitely has to.
So that's what Blowfish was about.
Makes sense. And the reception, was it? See, again, I've read in the interview that you've written that basically you really want people to connect with what you've written. You're a
Yeah.
person, not a person who's looking for success or fame or money, but you want
Yeah.
that connection to happen. When
Correct.
you write, people should resonate, and I think that is your reward. And I think
Correct.
that is something that
Correct.
you are very conscious about when you're writing as well. That I would want people
Correct.
to relate. Let me make it.
I write to influence. I write
Absolutely.
to influence. I want to influence. Like I want to influence and help somebody feel that they are not alone.
Absolutely.
Like I think virgins and blowfish are also both reflections of that. I don't want to make that in blowfish. I want to make that 27, 28-year-old kid. For me, I feel everybody's a kid.
Absolutely.
To know that what they're feeling is not wrong.
Yeah.
You know, when you feel claustrophobic every day when you go to office in the morning, right? And you feel people around you have adjusted quite well, they are quite happy. You feel what is wrong with me?
Absolutely. Yes.
You have to be told by someone there is nothing wrong with you. There is something wrong with all the other
with
people.
with with everyone. That's just what you
Yeah.
see is not the reality. So
If they feel that this is normal, right? There's something wrong with them. So what can you for me, the first two books was to write something that will make people feel that they are normal, they are okay. Books are like in a way window to the world. Books and music,
absolutely,
you know, and
absolutely,
films.
absolutely,
So they really ones that resonate with you, tell you that you're not alone, and they also show you the path in a way.
absolutely.
So in any small way, if I'm able to do it as a writer, that's what I want to do.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Okay, so now what we'll do, Siddharth, we'll come to the juicy part. We'll talk about UnMind now. So before we do that, I'll show to the readers what I have over here. I have UnMind. I have read it in my iPad. So I'm going to start with this question, okay,
Yeah.
for UnMind, which is absolutely crucial. So in your interview that you published, you had mentioned somewhere that you were able to discover Bhagwan Ramana Maharshi. And with all due respect for this entire podcast, I would be referring him as Bhagwan Ramana Maharshi because of pure respect and love. I don't want to address him by his name, Bhagwan Ramana Maharshi. You discovered him in a difficult phase of your life, or you were going through a lot of things and you explain that phase and how you stumble upon Bhagwan Ramana Maharshi.
Yeah, I mean, see what happens generally is right that you are sold a particular kind of life
Huh.
from childhood, right?
Yes.
And nobody really tells you how difficult life is. Nobody tells you,
Absolutely.
nobody. Your parents live through it, but they won't tell you, right? And the usual sales pitches, beta tum ye kar lo, wo kar lo, life set, right? So that is the sales pitch that you grow up with, right? And although there are difficulties in life, you somehow deep inside you keep believing that things will get better, right? Hope is the placebo. So hope is the true placebo. So I think so. Basically, things will get better. Things will get better, and you do all the usual ticks in life. Like you do your engineering, you do your MBA, you got a
You
corporate job,
marry.
etc., etc. Yeah, yeah. You do all the ticks. You have a child and all of that, and then you come to a point in life when you realize. Sometimes people call it midlife crisis, but I don't think it is midlife crisis. It's not. It doesn't happen midlife. If you are intelligent enough, it should happen much faster.
Absolutely. It's a
Uh,
late life crisis. It should have happened before that had you been a little bit.
yeah. So midlife crisis is something which has happened to people who were ignorant, in my opinion, about how
Absolutely.
miserable life is has
Brilliant.
been. So I
Brilliant.
think it should happen at the age of 30, 31, 32. So that is what happened to me. I was extremely unhappy. And I had written a couple of books, but I didn't find any true meaning in life. True meaning in life in the sense that I think somewhere deep inside I'm a seeker, and had started getting the feeling that everything that I have in front of me is not it. It being in capitals, it's not something that will give me peace or happiness in the truest sense. Um, and I wanted to know, what is life all about? What is the meaning of life? See, if I look at it very practically, like, let's forget about all this crap, right? About all the things that are being sold to you on social media, on
Yep.
TV.
Yep.
We're going to live till 80s max, 80,
Max. Yep.
85, and then you'll be dust, right? It's done,
Yep.
right? We are animals. We
Absolutely.
treat ourselves differently. We try to treat ourselves differently. We talk about our civilization and whatnot, but we are animals. You watch a cow and the cow lives till 14, 15.
Yeah.
We live till 80. That's the difference, right? There is
Absolutely.
no difference.
We
So
we as
what is,
a we are more horny animals. That's the only
yeah.
difference.
Yeah, so we are animals, right? So what is the meaning of all of this? When you wake up in the morning, right? Why do you do what you do, right?
Absolutely.
Now, in the end, it's like saying that I do it because I have a family, I do it because I have this, I do it, we have that. But frankly, if you keep questioning yourself and you give all the answers to yourself, new doubts and new questions will come up.
Absolutely.
There is no school of thought in the mainstream that will give you an answer that is complete, that completely brings your mind at peace. That's the point.
And gives you fulfillment.
Yes.
Fulfillment. There's no.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, there are no further questions after that. That is the thing that I was looking for. I could not find satisfaction and happiness. And I went through various, ways in which a seeker seeks, right? So you will seek, how will you seek? You will generally go into, is there happiness in alcoholism? Yes. To a particular point in time, yes.
Mm,
Is there happiness in meditation? Yes.
mm, mm,
To a particular point in time,
mm,
yes. Is there
mm,
happiness in drugs?
mm,
Absolutely.
mm.
Right. But how long does it last?
Is it lasting or
So
not?
yes. So the point is something that what Advait says is something which is there and then is not there anymore. It is not true. So that was in a way the answer that I was looking for. I did a lot of puja as well. I used to like sort of just sit in front of the home temple.
Alter. Yes.
Yeah, for about an hour, hour and a half, meditating, doing puja. I did a lot of meditation, but somewhere I was not getting the answer.
Absolutely.
Uh, and it's not like I'm not saying that any of these things are wrong.
No, 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 they
These
are
are
not.
all very, very good things. What happens is there's a personality type. Like for
Absolutely.
example, every person has a different way of getting to God.
Absolutely.
Uh, and some people can get to God through just pure devotion. Okay.
100%. Some do
And
it through external,
yeah,
props, for a lack of
correct.
better word, and
So
you call that tantra. Absolutely.
yeah, you can go through various ways of doing it. For me, I think I am a thinking individual. For me, the more academic way of going to God works for me. Like, for example,
Makes
I need
sense.
to understand what it is,
So
to the
broadly,
extent that I.
broadly people say कि ज्ञान मार्ग जो है, or the
हाँ,
inquiry mark,
ज्ञान
the
मार्ग आप
self.
कहोगे, इंक्वायरी मार्ग या ज्ञान मार्ग, that is what is. So the bhakti marg, for me, there are only two ways. There is bhakti marg or gyan marg,
समझ गया. That resonates
right?
with your personality. When you say for you there are two ways, that means these two things resonate with your individuality.
No, no, not really. Like what I'm trying to say is, I believe that there are only two ways to go to
अच्छा
God.
अच्छा 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 अच्छा.
Okay,
Either
there is
bhakti
no
or it is
third
self
way.
inquiry.
Yeah, either you have to have see. Okay, so bhakti marg is about taking that blind leap of faith.
Yes, surrender. It's surrender.
Yes, it's a complete
It's a
surrender,
surrender.
which is a complete love for God.
Absolutely.
Okay, there is love. There is such a
Absolutely.
deep ingrained love, which I
Absolutely.
am jealous of people who have it.
Even
Okay,
I am envious of people who can do that.
because
Yeah.
who have it, that is the thing to go for. I think that's
Absolutely.
the best thing possible. But the Gyan Marg is more difficult. Because in Gyan Marg, you have to go through knowledge leads to doubts, knowledge leads to questions, knowledge leads to self doubt. Knowledge is not always a good thing. So, what happens in Gyan Marg
Mind is
is
the obstacle.
Gyan, yeah, mind is the biggest obstacle in Gyan Marg because in Bhakti Marg, you more or less
Surpass it.
surrender the mind.
You surpass it.
You
Bypass.
short
Whatever.
circuit it.
Bypass.
Yeah,
Yeah. Bypass.
basically. Right. So the Gyan Marg is a difficult one, but I realized that it works for me as a personality.
Makes sense.
So I
Makes sense.
started reading a lot. I read quite a bit. I read Zen Buddhism. I read Christianity. I read Buddhism. I read all the ancient Indian texts, Patanjali, Avadut Gita, so on and so forth. And then I came across this 24 question interview of Ramana Maharshi, Bhagwan Shri Ramana Maharshi, which is called Who Am I, which is available
Yep.
everywhere.
Yes.
And if you go to the ashram, you can buy that book for 10 rupees. The
Yep.
reason why I think they've made it that way is because they want everyone to have access to it
Accessibility.
without being like that
Breaking
only the rich class
somebody's.
should know about it
Absolutely.
or only the middle class should know about. So I read that book and I think I told you this that I read that book. I didn't understand the book, but I knew that this was it. I
And
wrote
you
to a
also
couple of
said that if anybody says that they read the book for the first time and understood it, they're lying.
yeah. Yeah, you cannot understand who am I for the first time if you read the if you feel that you understood the book, then you are lying or you don't know yourself. Which is okay because okay, that is one very important. Self-awareness is very important in
Yes.
actually being a seeker. You need to know yourself, right? And you need to know
Absolutely.
your drawbacks and what is wrong with you in fact to become a good
Sincerity.
seeker.
I
Yeah.
would believe sincerity is extremely
Honesty,
important.
honesty,
Yeah.
honesty, brutal
Absolutely.
honesty about yourself. That is
Absolutely.
very, very important. When,
Absolutely.
if you don't have that, then I think you cannot never be a good writer.
No.
You can never be good at anything. But yeah, so for me, when I read that book, I realized that this was it, and suddenly I felt momentarily at that moment in time when I was reading that book, I felt a kind of peace dawning on me, which I had never felt. Which in a way is like a disciple finding his guru. A guru who is no more, but a guru who is communicating through to him
His works or
through the book. Yeah.
absolutely. This
And that's
happens.
what I think that for a guru, you don't need a live guru.
No.
You can have a tree as your guru. You can have a stone as your guru. You can have anyone as a guru.
But I
Uh,
feel, though what you're saying is right, but it also depends upon the state of the consciousness of the individual wherein he is at. So let's say if my son turns 16, he might want a physical presence,
yeah.
wherein up to until he can reach up to a stage when he does not need a physical presence and he is
Correct.
open enough or inquire enough or
Absolutely.
whatever.
It
Whatever.
depends on stage. It depends on stage and a kind of lesson that needs to be taught or learned.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
it depends on stage. You're absolutely right. So yeah, so that's what happened to me. I read him and I then read a lot of his
Disciples' works
teachings.
and everything.
Yeah. There is this book called Siddharth by Herman Hesse.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
You've
It's a
read the book?
fictitious retelling of the times. It's not about Gautam Buddha.
No, no, it's
It's
not about
about a
Gautam.
character.
It's
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 about the
about
character
it's
on
a
a
seeker.
similar
It's about
journey,
a seeker. It's
of
about
a
a
similar
seeker.
journey, on a similar
Yeah, it's
time.
about a seeker. But
Powerful
but
book.
the very important lesson in that book, it's a very, very good book. It's about a
Powerful.
150 pager book. I recommend that everyone should read that book because that book shows a seeker who starts out very early in his life,
Yeah, yeah. Yes,
very,
yes,
very
yes,
early in his
yes,
life,
yes, 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 yes.
and does everything that you could possibly pursue in terms of seeking, right? And he goes to the complete other side, which is to
Absolutely.
say, he goes to he surrenders to Maya, right? Surrenders to
Yes,
illusion at a particular
yes.
phase in his life. And in the end, when he gets to a point where he is finding peace, he realizes that he is not completely at peace,
Yes.
right? And then he finds out that he has a son that he was not aware of, and he needs to take care of that child. He needs to go back, take that child, take care of that child, and realize also that that child doesn't need him,
Yeah.
and the child then leaves him. So that's what. So I think that's exactly what I have been living through in my past few years, which is to seek while being a householder, and it has been a very interesting journey, very challenging journey.
It
full
is.
of delusions and illusions as well.
It
Sometimes
is.
early on, when you're seeking, you feel that you have understood everything, but then you realize that no, that's not true. It's a constant journey. You're always a student.
It's an exam you
Um,
never prepared for. The syllabus keeps on
yeah,
changing in real time. It's like the Harry
yeah,
Potter stairs. आप कहीं जा रहे
yeah.
हो, change हो गई, ये हो गई. You just have to navigate. There's no guide.
Correct, correct, correct. So that's why I wrote Unmind. I wrote Unmind because I at least wanted to convey what I have understood. I
Exactly.
felt that a wider audience needed to read it. I
Yes.
felt that his teachings were being accessed only by either foreigners,
Hmm.
because they are like naturally very curious people who happen to also have the money to roam the world
Yes, absolutely. And write about it
and
because all these things were then created in their languages, yeah. I mean,
correct,
it's a very big
correct. So
factor. बहुत
yeah,
बड़ा
yeah.
factor है ये.
So the accessibility of his teachings was, I felt, low in India.
Yes, absolutely.
There are a couple of modern saints who have made fun of him also,
Is it?
for
I didn't. अच्छा ऐसा है क्या?
yeah. I mean, I don't want to name, but
Yeah, let's
they're
not get
very,
into it.
yeah, they're very popular. But so I just felt that people should know him, should know his teachings, and in an accessible manner. So that's where the graphic medium came to my mind, and
Brilliant.
I happened to be lucky enough to find a artist who was able to understand the content well, and that's how Unmind actually came.
No,
Yeah.
brilliant. I thank you because I was also not aware of the core teachings. When I went through the book, I understood the core and it ignited enough interest in me to pursue further. Now, Siddharth, next, what we're going to do, something very interesting. I
Hmm.
have a couple of sentences that I've highlighted from the book, and
Hmm.
now very quickly, what I'll do, I'm gonna say those sentences, and I would want you to just quickly elaborate on them. Okay,
Hmm.
this will excite people for the book. I
Sure.
want people to have some curiosity now that they know about you. Where are you coming from? So we have one angle wherein people can have some connection with you. Now the
Yeah.
second connection I want is with your work, which is your most recent.
Yeah.
Uh, so the first sentence. Ramana Maharshi taught us to observe the pattern of this I.
Hmm.
According to him, if we could see through the falsehood of this I and go beyond it, we could attain complete peace of mind. Very
Hmm.
quickly, if you can explain what you mean by this concept of I, and if we could move beyond it, then we could attain complete peace of mind. So how do you relate understanding I-ness with your fulfillment and peace of mind? What is this? What it means to you?
Right. Uh, so how does separation get created? We say we are one,
Hmm.
right? This is something you would have heard, right? We are all one.
हाँ yeah.
Not
Yeah.
equal, one.
We are one.
Equal,
वेदांता का जो हाँ
right? So the question is, how does separation get created? How does duality happen? So it is Raghav and Siddharth. How is it happening? It is happening because Raghav and Siddharth believe that they are individuals.
yes
So I, I, and then the world. I, and there's this laptop, this table, this chair, this bottle. I and Raghav. So the separatedness in life, the duality of life, the multiplicity of life is created by first the concept of I. Okay.
yes
How does this thought of I arise? Do you feel that the child, when a baby is born, they are born with the concept of I-ness?
no
It happens over a period of time,
yes
okay,
yes
and it is the complete foundation of societal systems. It is the complete foundation of everything that happens in the world as human beings, right? Which is this thought, and which is the first thought. I is the original thought. Okay. The first thought is that I is this mind and body. This mind and
yes
body is I.
yes
The moment that thought arises, every other thought arises after that.
yes
Because all the thoughts that arise are a function of this foundational thought,
yes it
right?
revolves around it
Yes. Every other thought, the foundation thought is I. The I thought.
Yes.
The thing is, the I is a thought. I
It's not
is
a
a
reality.
thought, right? I is a thought. Now, this is where you inquiry happens. This is what self-inquiry is all about. It's about finding out what this I is. See, it's not about dismissing the I. Don't dismiss the I. Okay. Let's not dismiss the I. See, there is like, how old are you, Raghav?
35.
35. So 35 years of conditioning have gone by.
Yep. Yep.
35 years of conditioning have gone by in believing that I exists, right?
Yep.
So don't dismiss the I. There is no point of dismissing the I. It's
Yeah.
just too strong. आपको मैं एग्जांपल देता हूँ रामकृष्ण परमहंस का द एग्जांपल इज लाइक दिस दैट वन once somebody came to meet him. He used to live in a small hut, small room beside a temple.
Dakshineshwar. Yes.
Yes, right? Dakshineshwar. So he was working in the garden, and somebody says, Ramakrishna Paramahansa kahan rehte hain? And he pointed towards that house, and then he kept working, right? Why? Because the ego is erased, but the ego
Absolutely.
still exists. When you erase something, you will see the imprint of it on the page,
Yeah.
but it'll still exist, right?
Yes.
But it is to that point erased that he doesn't get up and say, I am Ramakrishna Paramahans. He doesn't
Yes.
say it.
Yes. Yes.
He just answers the question of where does Ramakrishna Paramahans live, right? So the point is that you inquire into the concept of I to the point where you start realizing without the brain doing much of the thinking. It's something that happens inside of you.
Absolutely.
You start realizing that it's an illusion. It's an illusion. And now there are various ways of realizing it. There are various ways of looking at it, which I have tried to outline in my book as well.
Now, next, a very interesting highlight. I really wanted to know this. There is no doer.
Hmm.
Doesn't imply that your body won't be the instrument of action.
Hmm.
It will act according to its genes and conditioning. So this is
Hmm.
kind of a कॉन्ट्राडिक्शन इसलिए भी है क्योंकि आपको पता है कि बॉडी भी है जो
Hmm.
कि it's still the instrument and yet there is no I. So just wanted to understand how can people still
See,
still keep the body as a reality also knowing that it's there, that if I'm not this I, if not this body, but yet it exists, it's a part
hmm.
of my instrumentation. So maybe
Hmm.
they would what they're suggesting is you use it as a tool. I don't know, I want to know your perspective.
This is a very subtle point because it can be understood in a lot of different ways.
Yes.
Okay, because one way of looking at it is to say that uh, what I'm trying to say is there is no will. Okay, which is what I'm trying to say, but I'm not trying to say in the way that people want to understand it. So let me just try to explain it. Um, we are always taught from the very beginning in our lives that you have to do this, you have to do that. ठीक है तुम पढ़ाई करो मेहनत करोगे तो ये होगा ठीक है correct so
बिल्कुल.
what is that implying what it is implying is that you can get up in the morning and if you decide to do it you can study for 14 hours continuously and get into IIT
Yep.
right I mean
Yep.
that is what our
Absolutely.
parents have taught us right
Yes. Yes. Yes.
yeah no nothing wrong with what is being taught
Yep.
okay
Yep.
I'm just saying that is with thought so what is the thought that gets imprinted in your head that I am the doer. I am the doer.
Absolutely. I did
I
this.
am.
I studied. I woke up. I got the result.
Yes, I am the doer, right? So therefore, what happens in that case is that everything is on the I. If
Yes.
something happened in the past, you live with that regret of I did that. Or if you succeeded, you will live with the pride of I succeeded. I am here because I studied hard. I did this.
Yes.
And that security guard outside, he's there because he did not do it,
Yep.
right? Uh, but the point is that if you really inquire into this doership, you will find a lot of places where it fails. Okay. And it starts failing in a couple of places, in very basic places. So, for example, you eat, right? Whatever is happening inside of your body, can you control it?
No.
It's crap. If somebody says I can control my digestion system, please give me a
No,
break.
you don't
Okay.
know how it works.
Yeah,
How can you
yeah,
control it?
yeah. After a particular point in time, you will fall asleep, no
Absolutely.
matter how much you try, right?
Absolutely.
So a lot of things where will doesn't work.
Haha.
Your apparent
Yes.
illusion of will
Yes.
doesn't work. It
Doesn't work.
doesn't work, right? So the question is, where does it work? So let's look at the normal choices in life. Right now, I have a coffee in front of me. I go to the pantry and I have a choice between a Nescafe and a English breakfast chai, right? What do I pick? Now, you will say that Siddharth has that choice, and Siddharth will pick what he feels like picking.
Yes.
The point is that true? The thing that I'm trying to get at is that we make choices based on what has been put inside the machine, which is the body. So, what is being put inside the machine? There are two things that are being put inside the machine. First thing is your genes. Your genes is your genetic code which you have inherited from your parents and
Yes.
from your ancestors.
Yes.
Your genes also decide a lot of things, including the kind of diseases you will get and not get, the kind of intelligence you will have and not have, right?
Yes.
And then to add to that, genes is conditioning. Okay. So, first, genes. Genes has nothing to do with your willpower. You will not decide where you get born, right? You can get born tomorrow in a rickshawala's house. You can get born in Mukesh Ambani's house. You will not decide, right?
Mm.
So genes is beyond your control.
Mm.
Now conditioning is conditioning in your control? No. See, you will get raised by your parents in a particular way. You will get exposed to your friends, your family, your relationships in a particular way. Which bed you sleep on, nothing is in your control from
No.
childhood, right?
No. Exactly.
You are getting conditioned. Okay, you are getting conditioned, right? And the moment you start getting conditioned, your choices that you make in life or apparent choices that you're making in life are a function of your conditioning till that point in time and your genetic code. So if Siddharth Tripathi picks a coffee right now instead of a chai, it's because of genetic genes and conditioning. The illusion is that I am making the choice.
Subconsciously, a lot of factors are contributing in that decision.
Yes, you are always thinking that you're making choices, but the truth is you're not making
You
choices.
are
Now,
not
how does
making
that help
choices.
me? How does that help me? It does not do anything except to get rid of you of two things. I'm talking practically. Let's forget
Yep.
about the whole esoteric intellectual concept,
Fulfill.
the regret of the past, okay? Because the past regrets are caused by what? I did this, or past tragedies, or he did that to me, okay, or she did that to me, or my parents got separated, I suffered so much, right, because of that. Or future, tomorrow my is going to kill me, right? Because if you look at all of these concepts, if I don't submit this report on time, I'm going to get killed. The
Absolutely.
whole thing about future stress and past regrets are caused by doership. Because first you believe that your father, for example, let's say somebody's father beat him up as a
Mm.
child, right?
Mm.
You believe your father beat you up because he willed it and he made it happen,
Mm.
right? You can never forgive that person
Mm.
because you feel that that person is the doer.
Mm.
The only way you can forgive the person is to know that that person is not the doer.
Mm.
Now, the same concept applies to a psychopathic killer. Okay.
Mm.
Society can choose to punish the killer, okay, which is okay. Okay, that's how societal systems are designed. There is nothing
Mm.
wrong with that.
Mm.
However, we must know that the actions of the killer are not the actions of a doer.
The actions of the killer are not the actions of the doer.
Yes. So there is no doer. There is genes and conditioning that have
Yes.
worked
Yes.
together to
Yes.
make that
Yes.
action happen, right? Therefore, there is no villain, there is no hero,
Got it.
there is
Got it.
no great man, there is no. So, what happens when you understand that the doership doesn't exist? One of the things that should happen naturally is compassion,
Mm.
empathy.
Mm.
See, I cannot look down upon that security guard.
Mm.
I can't.
Because
Why?
he's not responsible for where he is right now.
Yes, and so am I. I am not responsible for
Yes.
where am I. I was lucky. I was born in the right place at the right time, or I got lucky.
Environment, geography,
So why should
genetics.
I feel that he's different from me?
Absolutely.
Why should I ill-treat him? Why should I say anything to him? What? I have nothing to teach him.
So the
I have
best you
nothing
can
to teach.
do is to be compassionate towards him. That's
Exactly. And the other bit that should come is humility.
absolutely.
So two things that should come is humility, because you should understand, or I should understand, that there is nothing inside of me which is making me greater than anybody else.
Yep.
And the second thing is compassion, right? So if that is one of the things that I always say, that if you have to recognize a saint,
Yep.
okay, look for humility and compassion. If humility and compassion are not there, that guy is not there.
Yep.
He's not even close.
This is brilliant. So that's what I wanted to know, and this is very, very nicely put. You know. Okay. Last highlight that I would want you
Yeah.
to expound on, and then I leave it to the readers to go into the book. I have actually 13 highlights, but I don't want to give all of that away because they are
For
kind of
sure.
like the crux. The teachings in this book offer a piece of truth, but they are not meant to be believed blindly.
Yeah.
The masters would want you to inquire and explore and experience for yourself instead of turning their words into a faith. So, why I specifically wanted, I personally believe कि कोई भी एक saint होता है, उसकी teachings are generally, I mean, spread by the believers and the followers, but also distorted and
Hmm.
completely converted into a cultish-like ecosystem again by the devotees.
Hmm.
So that's why this statement is extremely important. But how that the master would want you to inquire and explore the experience for yourself. My problem in the country in which we are living in, bhakti or devotion or guru ने बोल दिया मान लिया इतना हमारे अंदर ingrained है that it becomes very difficult for an individual from the Indian subcontinent to inquire and not blindly believe in a guru when I have accepted him as a guru. A foreigner can do that because for
Hmm.
Westerners the concept of surrender is fairly difficult because they
Hmm.
have this analytical mind. We don't, as Indian followers and Indian broadly. So
Yeah.
this is a very difficult thing for do from someone who comes from the Indian ecosystem and the background. So
Hmm.
I
Right.
want you to emphasize and share your views on on this line. The master would want you to inquire and explore and experience for yourself instead of turning the word into a faith. How can we
Yeah.
Indians do that meticulously?
Western thought encourages free thinking. So exposure to Western literature, Western thinking, Western philosophy actually is very, very good. And I would highly recommend it. I think being a frog in the pond is not a great idea in
Yep.
that case. Although the pond is actually, if you look at Hindu spiritual tradition, it's very deep and very big. But still, in order to actually understand the pond better, you have to step out of the pond. So, but in case uh, Gyan Marg is about inquiring and seeking. There is no other
Yep.
way.
Yep.
So in case you, so like for example, if you believe that I is not the doer, okay, and with 35 years of conditioning, now Raghav today decides that I is not the doer. Raghav decides that I is an illusion, ego is an illusion. Uh, you will be brought back into the real world in 2 days, not more than 2 days,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
right? It doesn't
Beaten
work
back
like that.
into it. Beaten back
Yes,
into it.
you'll be beaten back
Absolutely.
into it,
Absolutely.
and that is the point of inquiry. The inquiry is about every pore in your body arriving at that realization,
It
not
should be in the
not the mind.
bones.
Yes,
Should be in the
and
bones.
that does not happen if you believe something blindly.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
This mark is more elite class, yeah. I mean, let's be honest about
Yeah.
it, right? I mean, when you don't have to worry about putting food on the table, then only can you think about stuff like this, right? I mean, the guy who's worried about what's going to happen, whether he's going to live tonight or not, is not going to think about seeking. Not always. Like for example, Kabir is a classic example of that, but But I'm saying in general, Gyan Marg is more an elitist path.
Haha, I absolutely agree. Because now the Gyan Marg, the literature that we have is in a linguistic, which is not our primary language. So
Correct.
accessibility is always limited to the class that has some kind of education. Actually,
Yes.
because of the language, it became elitist. It's so
Yes. It is elitist. So it is elitist until unless somebody is a there is a live guru like Kabir, okay, who is there telling you that that's how it is. The Kabir used to sing praises to Ram, and people used to feel he's a Muslim. Why is he doing that?
absolutely.
And nobody understood it. And the fact was that he saw God. He saw
Yep,
God, and it doesn't matter whether he saw God in Allah or he saw God in Ram. He saw God.
absolutely. He had the
So,
integrity.
so until unless you have a guru like that who's just sprouted out of nowhere and attained realization out of nowhere, accessing Yan Marg is extremely difficult.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And self-inquiry requires strength. You have to
Yeah,
look yourself naked, man. You
yeah,
have to really sit with yourself without these bloody Instagrams and I mean, I'm sorry I'm using the word bloody. It's not as if they don't have the utility. It's just
I,
sometimes it becomes so overwhelming that we feel very negative towards these
yeah.
platforms.
It's the term that Bhagwan uses for this is outward, inward. So he says that the more outward your brain mind goes, the more it is going away from
Huh.
reality.
I agree. I
Yeah, so
absolutely
like
agree.
Instagram is an example of that, right? So it's like outwardliness,
Absolutely.
um, which is the creating the distance. Um, but I mean, I think sometimes it's like you just wake up in the morning, go out in your to your balcony or go out of your home and just stand in front of a tree. I think,
Absolutely.
and just stand there for 5 minutes,
I think
and
silence. I think we
yeah,
spoke about silence. Silence is very powerful.
yeah,
Silence is
silence is extreme.
extremely. I believe in one thing, though I haven't experienced this thing. I'll be very honest with you. I believe in silence you can hear God. कहीं पढ़ा था
Yeah,
शायद मुझे रेजोनेट करा कहीं ना कहीं मेरी शायद बॉडी ने रेजोनेट करा या मेरे मेरे एसेंस ने रेजोनेट
ah,
करा कि इन साइलेंस यू कैन हियर गॉड अब
yes.
वो भैया साइलेंस ये तो मुश्किल है इट्स
हाँ
सो
नहीं
डिफिकल्ट
मुश्किल नहीं है एक्चुअली क्या होता है कि हम वो उसको खोजते नहीं है वी
यस
डोंट
यस
वी डोंट ट्राई टू फाइंड इट but it's there always with you. So the point is of to find it. I think sometimes you have to will your way. Will
यप
being instrumental in that. It's a very interesting word. Uh, but sometimes you have to will your way into shutting down some of these distractions
एब्सोल्युटली
and then forming a habit of being with yourself, forming a habit of being silent,
या
being quiet.
एब्सोल्युटली ब्रिलियंट
Yep.
so again one more time I would like to show people that please unmind is a gem of a book. It ignited a lot of things within me, and I really hope that Siddharth produces more work like that, covering various aspects. And to one last thing, Siddharth, what are your future plans? What are we working on next? Because there has to be a sequel to this podcast, wherein then we'll be delving specifically into our upcoming book as well. Any random thoughts, any random ideas that I know what you're working on it, but still, I would want you to
Right.
just
No, I'm working on two things. Which one will come to fruition, I'm not sure of.
yes, yes.
But two things. One is a retelling of Ramayana, or maybe some chapters of Ramayana from the perspective of Ram as a human being, because I feel that Ramayana is a journey of self-realization. For me, I look at that story more as a journey of self-realization than the journey of a god. Showing the world what it's
Absolutely.
like to be God. Sometimes it is seen as the journey of a God, showing the world what it's like to be God. I don't think like that. I have read and reread it many times. I in fact, the this is something that is difficult to admit, but I once I started looking at Ramayana as Ram as a human being, then I cried reading the Ramayana.
I can
I
totally
actually,
understand why. He is shown as a character. He's very vulnerable. The kind of thing that has happened to him, I sometimes wish काश किसी के साथ ना हो. It's not it's not easy to have things taken away from you when you were given everything and then suddenly taken away from you. And you
yeah,
being you don't know what to do, and then you're searching like a hermit. And
yeah,
another reason I feel that why you're right, in today's India doesn't need stories of God. India needs stories of men and women who have done things that could be. Because I don't want my kid to grow up in an ecosystem wherein he looks at Ram like a god. So what will he think? अरे वो तो भगवान है, हम ना कर सकते हैं जो भगवान कर सकते हैं. I don't want me to
exactly.
grow up like that. I don't want stories like that कि अरे धोनी के बैट में उस दिन हनुमान जी आ गए थे इसलिए श्रीलंका को. अरे he's worked hard for his craft. When will we start appreciating as a culture that process and working and honing those skills can result into godly outcomes?
Correct.
So I think
So
we need that. We need to
that is
humanize
exactly
him.
that said that someone needs to highlight. So that is one thing that I wanted to work on. The second bit is about Zen koans. So Zen Buddhism has this tradition of koans. You must have heard of this one. You have this the Zen koan is uh, you have heard the sound of two hands clapping. Now tell me the sound of one hand clapping.
Okay, I haven't heard, but this sounds very interesting.
Yeah, so these are the two
Thought provoking.
lines. Yeah, so these are two lines, and then the new monks in monasteries are given these two lines, and they are said, okay, now go, okay, and come back when you think you have an answer,
Yes, I've
and
heard this.
and every time they come back with a logical answer, they are thrown out, because there is no logical answer
There's
to
no
that.
logical answer to that.
Yes. So there is a very another very interesting one where this is about a soldier who is at the front, right? And there is one riddle that always bothers him, and he has spent a lot of time in the infantry at the front. And one day he hears about the Zen monk who has come to a town nearby. So he travels about 3-4 hours by foot to get to that temple where the Zen monk is staying, and he meets the Zen monk, and it's a rainy day, and he goes inside and he says that there is something bothering me. We have time, or you are done?
No, 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 no,
If
no. We have
Okay,
time. You can
okay.
elaborate. Absolutely.
Okay. So I'll tell you this story just to give you an example of how this works in terms of, teaching without really teaching. So this guy says that, see, there is a riddle and it's been bothering me for the last 2 years. And the Zen monk says, yes, please tell me what is it. And he says that, see, there is a farmer, and the farmer had a goose. It was a
Mm.
baby goose, and the farmer was very protective and loved the goose a lot. So the farmer put the goose in a bottle, and the farmer would put like food inside the bottle from the top, and would make sure that the goose is well fed, everything is good with the goose, and the bottle was big enough when the goose was small. And but in a year or two the bottle became very big, and now the goose is like really struggling inside the bottle, and the farmer has two choices. He can break the bottle and risk that the goose will die, because breaking
Yep.
the bottle might result in shards
Yep.
going inside the goose will die, and the farmer loves the goose too much. Or the farmer lets the goose be and the goose dies inside the bottle, because the goose is not able to fit into the bottle anymore. And you tell me what is the answer to this, because I have very high hopes from you. I have not got an answer from anyone else. And this question keeps bothering me all the time. And
Hmm.
the monk keeps quiet. After a while, the
Hmm.
monk says, would you like to have some tea? It's raining outside.
Hmm.
And then they have tea. And then they talk about this and that. And then the soldier is finds the sees that it's evening and it's time for him to go back. He had taken only one day off, so he needs to go back and report back late night. So he gets up and he makes a bow, and he's just stepping out of the room, and the Zen monk says after him, he says, "Look, the goose is out."
Hmm.
That's the story.
So How was the goose out? Can you repeat that again?
So the Zen monk treats him to tea, okay, talks to him about the weather, and then the soldier is sitting quietly, and then the soldier decides it's time to leave,
Hmm.
and then he's leaving, and the Zen monk says, "Look, the goose is
The
out."
goose, ha. So
Now
the
you have to
goose
think
was
about
the,
why he says the goose is
yes.
out,
Got
right?
it.
So the point of the Zen monk
Hmm.
was not to answer the question that the guy was
Abs-
asking.
Absolutely.
The point was to point the guy towards something which which will really be of use to the guy.
Absolutely.
So
And for him to then think about it and for him to then come to his own correct
yeah,
answer.
so this is exactly what Ramana Maharshi used to do. If you asked him any question, like, and I think you find it in the book, any question you'll ask him, he'll point you towards
Yes.
the
Yes.
asker of the question. He'll say,
Yes.
okay, whatever question you're asking, find out who is asking the
Who's
question.
asking? Who's asking?
Yeah.
And I think one analogy that you have drawn in the book, I mean, narrated, is that comparing with the toaster. Brilliant.
Hmm.
कि
Yeah.
ये उसके पार्ट्स हैं, ये उसके ये हैं, ये सारी चीजें कंबाइन करके एक टोस्टर बनती है.
That
And the
analogy was
analogy was absolutely
Ye-
bonkers.
Yeah, that analogy was drawn by Ramesh Balsekar, who is the other guru.
Ah, yes, yes,
Yes.
yes,
So that
yes.
analogy was drawn by Ramesh Balsekar. I sort of elaborated a little bit on it, and Kalyani actually did a brilliant job of illustrating that
No,
analogy.
absolutely,
Yeah. Yeah.
absolutely.
So these are the Zen koans, right? There are many such koans. What I have done is I have collected these koans, I have researched, done a lot of research in terms of bringing all of these koans because there's no copyright on any of these koans. So some of these koans are really very inaccessible, very difficult to understand.
Makes sense.
Right? Some of these koans are very simple to understand. So I'll give you an example of very difficult to understand.
Okay.
Right? So there is one in which there is a Zen monk, and every time anybody asks him about, please teach us something, he'll raise
Hmm.
his finger.
Hmm.
He'll raise his finger. Okay.
That's it. That's it. He just
That's
raised
it.
his finger.
So it's called the story's name is Gutai's finger. Gutai is the name of the monk.
Of the monk.
Okay, so he'll raise his finger. That's it. He won't say anything. So one of his disciples, okay, he's extremely young. Okay, so he comes and one day some of the other monks are, Gutai is gone somewhere. He's gone
Hmm.
outside.
Hmm.
The chief monk has gone outside. The one who raises the finger. So this guy, the young monk, pretends to be Gutai, and when somebody is asking a question, he raises the finger. Okay, and Gutai comes in, takes a knife and hacks his finger. Okay. And in that moment, that young monk achieves enlightenment. So that's the story. Okay. So now you need to go back, or all of us as students need to go back and figure out why, right? And there is no right or wrong answer to this question.
Got it.
Depending on your level of maturity
Absolutely.
in the spiritual spectrum, you will arrive
Absolutely.
at an answer to this question, and
It's
all those
subjective.
answers will be right. But
Absolutely.
that answer will help you progress further, is what the point
Absolutely.
of a Zen koan is.
Absolutely.
So my intention is to put some of these Zen koans together into a graphic medium. Ideally, if I can get resources for it into an animated medium.
Got it.
So
Got it.
so yeah, that is the second book that I'm thinking of. So that's
But I think that's a
uh,
great idea because again, this, to be very honest, the the thing will have more of a global appeal because Buddhism. If you think from that perspective, if you think from the
yeah,
perspective of the readability,
correct.
because Ramayana in India is so heavily scrutinized,
Yeah.
so heavily scrutinized that people have to generally censor their version of the Ramayana and they could not do what they really would want to do with it. So with
Yeah.
this Zen book, you can have a global appeal as well, and then you can reach up to a stage wherein you can be absolutely brave with your interpretation of Indian epics. I'm just saying what
Yeah. So
how the
yeah,
world can work.
you're right. You can look at it that way as well. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
So that is brilliant, yeah. I mean, it was got to know so much about you, got to know about UnMind. I hope the readers connected with you. They got certain things that they can say, "अरे यार, ये तो अपने जैसा ही है." ये तो I can also relate to it. And also, if they got inquired enough to get into the teachings of Mr. Bhagwan Ramana Maharshi, because not many people do know about it. They know certain stories about it. That
Yeah.
I know a story wherein somebody went to meet Bhagwan Ramana Maharshi, saw him, and he saw Kartikeya lying there.
Hmm.
And one of his disciples said that what you saw is the reality. अब वो थोड़ा सा वो एंगल चला गया कि वो मेटाफिजिकल तो नहीं बोलूंगा मैं इसको, मैं
Correct.
थोड़ा
Correct.
अलग ही वो लॉर्ड कार्तिक एंड लॉट ऑफ पीपल यूज्ड टू से that
Hmm.
yes, he was an incarnation of Lord Kartikeya.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
now whether that is because of in which he was living, wherein you have the worship, or that's a.
Right. Right.
But so Siddharth, I hope you also liked the conversation.
Yes. Yes, it was very enjoyable, Raghav. Thank you so much.
I
Always a pleasure talking to you.